everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Kimberly Guilfoyle. Excuse me, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Democrats are celebrating their first victories in the era of President Trump. Wins in the gubernatorial races in Virginia and New Jersey and contests elsewhere across the country. They've declared Election Day 2017 a referendum on the president.
You have sent a message tonight, not simply to the voters in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You have sent a message across the globe to South Korea. Donald Trump, you don't stand for our values.
You made a choice for better schools, for better jobs, for better education, and better health care. And you rejected Donald Trump's fear, hatred, and bigotry.
This is one of the first major elections since Donald Trump was elected. Tonight, New Jersey sent an unmistakable message to the entire nation. We are better than this.
This was a rejection not only of President Trump, but of the policies that he and the Republican Party seem to be adopting.
President Trump sees it otherwise. Though he was unable to help draw more votes for Virginia Republican Ed Gillespie, he tweeted, "Gillespie worked hard but did not embrace me or what I stand for. Don't forget, Republicans won 4 out of 4 House seats. And with the economy doing record numbers, we will continue to win even bigger than before." So let me clarify. No, Greg, I didn't burp at the beginning. It's like sometimes you need to swallow before you talk, but then all of a sudden, like, we're on, and then, like, I was like, oh, my gosh.
It was after you said my name.
It's just like I was for Clem.
It's just lack of professionalism that disgusts me. You know, there are people that tune in for real TV,
well,
and to hear you burp and then pretend that you didn't burp.
Let's start with real analysis,
okay.
and we'll go to Kimberly first.
Thank you so much. Really, Greg, you should learn something from this experience.
I'm done.
So obviously this was a bit of an upset, right? Because there was, yes, he was down, I was saying 3%, but it was within the margin of error. So you thought, okay, maybe he can pull it out because he had the momentum. Okay, then he got the endorsement from President Trump. So anyway, you slice it, you got to be honest. This was, disappointing because they really hoped to kind of turn this around. When you look at the map, you saw, wow, red, but some of the bigger cities and those urban areas, the suburbs, and we've seen that happen, right? In New York, et cetera, and where you've got a few key places, cities that are more urban that actually pull in the large majority of votes, despite the fact that the whole rest of the map was red. So it's fascinating from that point because we've seen a bit of a trend, in that direction, and we certainly did in the presidential election. And then I thought it was kind of interesting what Trump kind of backed away a little bit, saying, well, you weren't enough like I am, so therefore you didn't get it across the finish line.
Well, there is a lot of analysis going back and forth on that. What do you think of it?
I don't necessarily believe the Trump tweet, but it was great spin. I'll give him that. I think a Democrat won a blue state last night. No time to panic, but there are some serious warning signs there.
You're wearing a blue tie today.
I know. Well, it's I'm just playing mind games with the left, Kimberly. And we're going to be going to the Scream Fest later when they all yell and how angry they are about the election. I want to be undercover.
Yes.
So look at Virginia. I don't think the last 3 presidential elections a Republican has won that state.
Right.
There's a lot of government employees there, a larger Hispanic population, and very wealthy zip codes. Virginia was never Trump country. Donald Trump eked out the primary win over Rubio and then lost it by 5 points to Hillary Clinton. The new Virginia governor, as Greg pointed out the other day, is a 2-time George W. Bush voter, not a member of the resistance, and a Navy veteran. And the Democrats have not won anything on red territory yet. Let's be honest. This was not on enemy territory. This was their home turf. So let's pump the brakes on the Dem wave. At the same time, I think in 2008 or 9, after Obama was in the same position, Republicans had won New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Virginia. So let's just slow down. Now, there are warning signs. Trump's approval rating in Virginia, 40%. That's not very good. Turnout among Democrats was very, very high, and it was an anti-Trump vote. It wasn't a pro-Northam vote. And they did very well, as Kimberly said, the Democrats among suburban people, especially college-educated whites, especially college-educated women. And the Republicans got trounced in the state legislature races, which means the grassroots movement is there. There is a concern, though, and here it is. Remember how Obama did so well when he was on the ticket? But then when he was off the ticket, he got trounced. So the warning sign is because of Trump's loyal base, and he's a persona-driven movement, that when he's not there in a midterm or an off-year election, the people aren't going to turn out, and it's going to be an anti-Trump vote instead.
Well, part of that, though, Greg, was because Obama pretty much didn't worry about it. He just let the party kind of do it. He was like the party of one. And that's one of the reasons that they've had to try to claw their way back.
Yeah, I think this is this is completely natural. The pendulum swing. We saw this under Obama. The opposition is always more galvanized when they are out of power. They have every reason to go out there and vote. And it's more exciting to vote for President Obama than his party, and it was more exciting to vote for Donald Trump than his party. So that's what you see. You need a focal point, which was President Obama and Donald Trump. But it's oddly, it's like a natural set of checks and balances. You elect this guy, Donald Trump, and then you let the other side gain seats by not voting. It's almost like unconsciously, it's some kind of evolutionary reflex that we crave the tension between parties. We want to have this guy in, but we don't want to go too far, so we almost unconsciously decide not to put anything out there until we have to. So you get this weird kind of balance. But I want to talk about just one more thing. If Ed Gillespie had won, would have said this was a harbinger of bitter, hateful campaign, that now these ugly ads that go after sanctuary city laws, this is going to be the norm because Ed Gillespie won. Ralph won. That's an ominous sign that bitter, hateful identity politics ads win, because that ad that we trashed worked.
Yeah.
The ad that portrayed white people as white Republicans as racists who kill children, it actually worked. When Tom Perez talks about fear, hatred, and bigotry, he's talking about his own party. This should send a chill up everybody's spine, if you still got a spine, that this is dangerous stuff. The company that did that ad already claimed they're going to do it. They're going to double down. I hate that phrase, but they're going to double down in it. So the idea that somehow,
expand.
They did something really, really ugly, and it worked.
I think that they would have done that ad against Ed, even if he had not run ads about MS-13.
Yeah.
Because I think that is, that they'll probably will. They'll try to run that play again and again. Juana, we'll give you the floor here in a second. I just want to point out that married women had gone for President Trump in Virginia by like a point over. Ralph Northam won married women by 10 points over at Gillespie. But still, Gillespie got 120,000 more Republican votes in 2017 than he did in 2014 when he ran for the Senate. So it was a high turnout election all across the board, but the Democrats certainly had a lot more votes.
They did have a lot more votes, and to me, it has all the markings of a wave election. Going back, if you look at what happened in 2006 when the Democrats took over the House of Representatives, and you go then forward to 10.
Yeah, I remember that.
When you remember that well. To 10 when the Republicans took over the House from the Democrats. And so what we saw in both cases is very similar to what we saw here in Virginia, but nationwide last night. And so then you look at things like now the generic number in terms of preference, Republicans, Democrats for the House of Representatives, is double digits at the moment for the Democrats. And then factor in what Greg was talking about in terms of Trump's approval rating. At the moment, I think Gallup has him about 38%. This does not help, especially when you consider that historically the party
that was Jess, you said that.
I'm sorry. Okay, so the party.
We were two different people, Juan.
I know.
Not to him.
I guess
we all look alike, huh?
Yeah, I think
politics
so.
at the 5.
Yeah.
When you consider that the president who's in power is not popular, it historically hurts in the midterms. Now, I think the big points that I took away from last night, the big issue was not immigration, not at all. The big issue, number one issue, health care. Not even close. 40% of voters said it was their number one issue. And they favored Northam, the Democrat, by 55%. Wow. Now, you factor in what happened in Maine, where you had Maine voters go against their governor and say, you know what, we want to expand Medicaid. Oh, my gosh. This is the first time that Obamacare has been expanded by a a referendum, if you will, general vote of the people. And again, it says a lot about what could be the big issues going into 18. And the other thing that I would throw in here is that for the Democrats, the reason they're so exuberant is they're going to see a boost in fundraising, in candidates. Ray Ben Lujan, who runs the House Democratic election card. He's saying, you know what, I'm calling people all night. People are calling me back. That's unbelievable. All of a sudden, Democrats who've been lagging find that they have some energy. So I think this is good news.
Can I bring in somebody who was not on the ballot but was on people's minds? And it's Hillary Clinton, who said that last night was a great reminder of what's possible when we come together and fight for what we believe in. So I wanted to take a few minutes to celebrate the extraordinary successes of a few groups I and Onward Together proudly fight alongside. And yet, Kimberly, what do you think of that? Because she's not, I think that the Democrats are a little bit more liberated now that they don't have her as the candidate.
Like an albatross hanging, choking the very life out of the neck of the party. Yeah, I mean, of course she's trying to, like, you know, bootstrap onto this and say, you know, this is the movement. This is what we do.
Look what I did.
Like, she's the face of it. Look what happened now that I've been back out talking about it.
She's the Rosie Ruiz of politics.
Yeah.
You know, snuck into the as the marathon was ending. She's pretending she's pretending she's leading the parade.
It's unbelievable. But, you know, people see through it. They see through it. So, okay, she wants to be polite. She wants to give some congratulations. But this really doesn't have anything to do with her.
No, it's all about Trump. I mean, I don't know if that's good news to you guys, but it's kind of curious because it was like 60%.
It's good news in some places.
What do you mean?
Well, meaning that, like, I think Virginia is just a tough place for Republicans going forward. I do think that it's, as Jesse asked me before, is it no longer a purple state? And I think it is. Like, Virginia is a blue state.
I
think it's a blue
so
state.
de Blasio won the mayor race in New York.
75% of the people didn't vote.
A Democrat won in New Jersey. I mean, everyone was surprised when Chris Christie won there. I mean, it's a blue state one. Virginia's blue.
I don't
wouldn't
believe
get
that.
too excited about the wave
I
one.
remember-
It's still right now a little trickle.
Well, let me just say this.
Don't
I
get
think that
too worked up.
when you look at the map that Kimberly was describing, you see all that red in the middle, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but those are...
And these are mostly, I wouldn't
they're
even say
more rural.
rural.
There's not that many people that live there.
Yeah, let's put it that way.
Okay.
But I will say this, that 60% of the people who voted said they had a negative, in Virginia, negative impression GOP, and 60% said they have a negative impression of, guess who, Donald Trump.
But a lot of
They're
the
in
negatives
the
for the
D.C.
Democratic
media
Party.
market, too. And, yeah, Democratic Party approval rating is at a historic low.
Yeah,
I think
it's not
at
good
about
either.
in the 30s one.
No,
so
Well, but also,
you
let's
guys
all...
aren't doing that great either.
We got to run, but let's all keep an eye on Governor Terry McAuliffe because he felt pretty good last night, I think.
Oh,
so,
scary.
President Trump won the White House exactly 1 year ago today. Greg gives an annual review next.
It's been 1 year since Donald Trump was elected. According to leftists, the world should have already ended. Stock market crash. America becomes a pariah. Paul Krugman bursts into a cloud of hot, powdery dust. This was our destiny. Well, sorry, guys, it hasn't panned out. Stock market climbs. Joblessness drops, pipelines proceed, ISIS piles up like firewood, regulations roll back, Paris Accords nixed, China's playing ball with North Korea. Still, the left marks this day with an event called Scream Helplessly at the Sky on the anniversary of the election. Here's tape of them warming up. So, is this an adult response? No. Can you think of a time when you marked a loss with a tantrum after age 4? I remember elections where my guy lost, but I got on with my life. Why can't these folks do that? It's because they made politics a bigger part of their lives than it should be. They made the political personal. Sadly, once politics trumps everything, it's often because these people lack real friends and healthy relationships with their own families. Instead of fun, they fret. Instead of laughing, they lament. They're miserable. Look at sports, entertainment, friendship. Where politics intrudes, it devours and replaces joy with anger. Look what happened to the NFL. It used to be fun. The key to life is realizing that life goes on with or without politics. And that person you hate politically might be more like you than you might think. Admitting that is part of growing up, which sadly doesn't always accompany growing old. Juan, I know you're distraught that the world has not ended under the greatest president we've ever had, Donald Trump, which you admitted to me in the break. You said, Greg,
yeah, that's right.
You said, Greg, I have to admit, he is the greatest president we've ever had.
I heard
You're going to deny it now, I know.
Yeah, that's me. I'm
heard
always
it.
like turning around on a dime. Because initially I said it would be great if Greg Gutfeld was president. He'd be the greatest president
That is
ever.
true.
Yeah.
That is true.
And so you'd be much better than the guy whose ratings are the lowest in the history of any president his first year.
Does it matter? You can vote for somebody you don't like.
Well, I don't know. I'm just telling you that he's not a popular president. Greg.
No, but if a lot of people don't like their bosses, but still realize their boss is effective.
Right.
Well, but
Right?
I
I
don't
told
know
you to
that
say
they
that.
Does not
realize
matter?
that.
Yeah.
Because what
On
defines,
cue.
this first year, it seems to me, is Trump's play to resentment, to grievance, to identity politics.
Much like Ralph
I mean,
Northam.
when you were talking about NFL, I thought, NFL, who made this into this big divisive issue? Oh, Donald
No,
Trump.
Colin Kaepernick.
How about, we were talking about
his
immigration
girlfriend.
in the Virginia race, right? That it was not a big issue. Healthcare was the big issue. But it turns out that in that last week, when that big controversial ad that you mentioned was running, guess what? It was about 20% of the electorate made their decision as to who to vote for, and overwhelmingly, they went to the Democrat, who said last night in his acceptance speech, Virginia is going to be open, accepting of people, and not bitter. I think he was talking about Donald Trump.
Well, maybe.
Okay, well,
Go ahead,
listen,
Kimberly.
let's talk about effectiveness and talk about numbers that matter, not the other side's opinion of whether he's into identity politics. I mean, I think the other side's far more guilty of that. When we look at the job numbers with President Trump, those numbers are up in a very favorable way. Our trade with Canada, Mexico, of exports from the United States is up. We look at all the things that he's accomplishing with national security and foreign policy, with ISIS being beaten down to a pulp. These are the types of things that I think should matter, that people should be happy about and say, okay, let's be fair in our analysis and look at the actual cold, hard facts and statistics of what actually transpired since he became president versus whether or not, he suits your fancy.
Exactly. Personality is not everything. Don't you know it, Jesse? But I want to you're going tonight. I don't know if I should be telling you, but you're going to the Screaming event. We're not going to say where.
In an unknown location, Gutfeld.
Yes.
Thank you for ruining the surprise.
Oh, you're undercover.
You said it in the
No
A-block.
one will know
Yes.
this.
I know, but I didn't want to remind everybody that I also blew it.
Oh, my God.
Leave that to me.
Complicated.
Yes, thank you, Gutfeld. No, I prepared for this segment by giving the president a grade. I'm giving him a B+. And I think he's had a great year. I definitely think there's been some self-inflicted wounds and there's some room for improvement. National security and foreign affairs, I give him an A-. If you think about it, he wipes the caliphate out. He rallies the world around North Korea. He's getting us out of these bad climate and trade deals. Iran's on notice. Syria got the message.
Yeah.
NATO's now ponying up some of their money. And he's forged a lot of great relationships with these world leaders. And the Mideast trip, European trip, and Asian trip, I think, have been seamless. And he's given great speeches on each one. Domestic policy, I'd give him about a B, B- maybe. A lot of self-inflicted wounds there. Obamacare repeal didn't happen. The tax cuts, you know how I feel about that. Not looking great on that point, too. We have dramatic staff shakeups weren't really necessary. That caused a lot of drama. And then obviously the Comey deal causes a major, major problem if something bad happens there. But also the good side, Gorsuch. You have MS-13 being decimated. Border crossings are down. The wall prototypes are up and being tested. Mexico will still pay for it, by the way. Manufacturing and mining jobs are up. GDP growth's on pace for 3% this year. Under Obama, never hit 3% any year.
That's not
and
true.
Roll.
No, it hit 5%.
5%? What planet are you
quarter.
on?
You're talking about
5%.
quarter.
I'm talking about the full
I wanna
year.
get
No,
Dana
it hasn't. It's not
showing.
3% for the full year.
Contribution is really, why have me?
Can I finish? There's some intangibles. There's some intangibles.
Oh, my
Everyone will like this.
God.
I think
Some people can't
Charlottesville
control
really
themselves.
hurt his brand.
Yeah.
But besides that, the intangibles, when he's fighting the culture war, when it comes to kneeling, or when it comes to political correctness, I think the tweeting's great, 90% of it. I think he's hilarious, especially when he acts like a boss and puts people in their place. So all in all, I think solid B+.
All right. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, actually, I didn't get to a few things.
We're out of time.
Dana?
We are out of time, but would just say voting in droves is a lot more effective than shouting at the sky, and that's what they did in Virginia last night. And I think if the Democrats can figure out a way to keep that going, then yeah, there's a problem. And even if you don't like him, and you could be supportive of all of those things, if you look at some of these states that are changing, the Electoral College will not save you in 2018, and it's really important for him for all sorts of reasons to want to have the House and the Senate kept in Republican hands. The other thing I think that could hurt the Democrats is endless talks of impeachment and impending impeachment. And Representative Al Green of Texas today was on the floor promising a vote on impeachment by Christmas. And I think if the Democrats want to erase their enthusiasm gap, then they should keep talking about that, because that will generate enthusiasm amongst Republicans.
I think the Democrats might use impeachment the way the Republicans used Obamacare. Talking. When they get to that point, just go,
sorry.
Just kidding. I can't give him a grade without the tax stuff. I would give him an A on foreign policy.
Yeah.
And if the tax bill's bad, he gets an F on that, then that's a C.
Okay.
Oh, you're one of those graders.
Yes, I am. Donna Brazile now insists the Democratic primary wasn't rigged for Hillary after she proclaimed it was. If you're confused, you're not alone. Next.
Former DNC chair, Donna Brazile is making the rounds to plug her new memoir. You can catch her on Tucker's show tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. And with Dana?
No. Well, maybe next week.
Well, she's going to be on with you.
She's
or we're
coming
gonna have
on,
a
but we're working
problem.
on scheduling.
All right, perhaps you can get to the bottom of why she's been backtracking on her own claim that the 2016 primary was rigged in Hillary Clinton's favor.
I did not say the process was rigged. I said I went to find out.
But then you
if
said
it
you
was
came back,
rigged.
but you said proof of it being rigged in the piece. No?
I said no. Willie, I got to show you. You know, I got a little St. Anthony here, honey. And I said I would get to the bottom of whether or not Hillary's team had rigged the party process in her favor. I believe it was a fair fight because ultimately the voters decided.
Well, Brazile did, however, have some choice words for the Clinton campaign today.
Why did they lose? Was it, at the end of the day, arrogance?
Yes, Joe. It was a cult. I felt like it was a cult. You could not penetrate them.
All right, so what do you make of it? I like the honey too, Danny.
If she doesn't remember saying rigged, then she's like me. She drinks while she writes, or she did write it, because she did say it was rigged, right? Didn't she say it was rigged? Anyway, I think she should have run. She's far more interesting and entertaining and more blunt than any of the candidates they had when you listen to her.
Very good company.
I think she could have been a pretty strong adversary to Trump. The thing is, right now, the Democratic Party is a cat with a hairball in its throat, and they're trying to cough it up. It's the Clinton hairball. For that cat to move on and eat a nice meal, it's got to dislodge that hairball. And she's right. It was a cult. Do you know do you remember Chelsea's nauseating speech at the DNC, as if she was speaking down to all the little people, and it was very slow? It's like at the audience.
It was so bad that we couldn't even talk about it the next day.
But she was speaking to them like they were dropped as children, like they had problems. It was very cult-like to me, and I think she was right, Donna Brazile. I think she should have run, maybe 2020.
Well, people have tried to get her to run for years in Washington, D.C., like for mayor or for something, and she resists because she always liked to work on campaigns. But I'm looking forward to Tucker's interview today, because he's known her for years as well, and I think he'll be able to ask some questions that will be new and different that you haven't seen so far.
I hope so. Tucker's like that.
I think I can't wait to see the faces he's going to make.
He doesn't make any faces. His face just goes.
I hope she calls him honey.
Yeah,
like
I can't wait to see
Willie
the face
Geist.
he makes when she calls him honey.
He'll like it. He'll smile. He goes with it. He's not.
It'll say, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, exactly.
I have really grown to like Donna Brazile. I'm liking everything she's saying, everything she's writing. I hope she writes a whole series about this, and I might even buy one out of my own pocket.
Gator arms over here.
I think she's backing off.
You're like, oh.
I learned it from the best. I think she's backing off the rigged thing because it makes Hillary look even more crooked than she already is, and it makes the Democratic brand look corrupt. So she's going to be as honest as she can possibly be without destroying the brand going down. But there's another great bombshell in this thing I saw.
Go ahead.
So the FBI says, hey, DNC IT guy, you guys got hacked. The IT guy turns on the computer and he goes, oh, no, we're good. And doesn't tell anybody. And then the FBI calls them like 5 more times and goes, guys, you've been hacked. Finally, they get someone with authority, and they go, you know what? We're not going to do anything about it till the primaries are over. So they waited months while these hackers were inside their server doing God knows what. Finally, Debbie Wasserman Schultz finds out. She goes, it's too bad. Doesn't tell anybody, doesn't hand over the server. It makes perfect sense now why she didn't hand over the server. And she didn't know why her own IT guy was running around doing God knows what. The whole thing stinks. It's like you go on vacation, and your neighbor calls you and goes, hey, you guys were just burglarized. And then you wait until you come back from vacation to call the cops.
Right.
It's like they didn't even care.
But who ignores something like that, Juan? When the FBI goes, hello, computer intrusion, you've been hacked,
But
and you don't do anything about it. It's like very bizarre.
This has been out. This story's been out for a year or so. Believe me,
We're
everybody
gonna
knows
keep
about
talking
this
about
story.
it.
But what was interesting
But if you
from
call
Donna,
it a bombshell,
It works with me.
Okay, but what was interesting from Donna's perspective is she said she went to the White House, and there's Eric Holey, Attorney General, saying, hey, the DNC's not reacting. There's Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor, saying, hey, you got a problem over there. And she said, when she got the call from Debbie Wasserman Schultz, because she was a member of the Democratic Committee, so Wasserman Schultz was informing everybody, says Wasserman Schultz is rather nonchalant about it, big deal. Listen, I think Donna still, when she speaks about a cult, she's not speaking about Hillary Clinton. She's talking about the campaign. She's talking about the people who ran the campaign. She's talking about the people, beginning with Podesta, but going through the campaign manager that did not respect her and didn't respond to her. And I think she feels like...
And then if you weren't in Brooklyn, you were no one. So if you think about that campaign manager for Hillary Clinton in Wisconsin, who's calling over and over again saying we need more resources, and Brooklyn says, no, actually, we're looking at our database here, and everything looks fine for you, so we're good.
Yeah, and so I think that's just evidence of people who get locked in and aren't in touch. And the thing about Donna Brazile, for those of us who know her, is Donna's got great instincts. I mean, Donna gets out there and she's on the ground. She organizes and she works.
Well, she's well-liked by people on both sides, whatever your ideology.
Let me finish on this point, Kimberly.
Sure.
She's not well-liked at the moment by Democrats because they feel as if she has played in, especially leading up into the big races yesterday, they were worried about, turns out it did not be a factor, but they think that she has basically played into all the Russian Republican argument, Democrats in disarray. It didn't play out that way.
You know who else is unhappy with her? Cults. I mean, she really insulted the cult world by comparing the Democrats to a cult. I think she owes all cults an apology, including my own, the unicorn cult.
I think Tucker should ask her about whether or not she was going to appoint Joe Biden as the nominee because Hillary was fainting.
That would have been a good idea.
Because she doesn't have the power to do that.
Lasso. Okay. Reminder to please catch Donna Brazile on Tucker Carlson tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Much more to come on The Five. Stay ahead.
They need to add.
Passive with the things you say.
As many of you know, one of the victims of the Texas massacre on Sunday was an expectant mother, Crystal Holcomb. One reporter covering the shooting is getting some attention for a comment she made while telling Holcomb's story.
Their granddaughter-in-law, Crystal Holcomb, she was pregnant. She died inside this church behind me. And not only her and her unborn child, but 3 of her children. And today, during this press conference, we learned that her unborn child is included in that count of 26 dead here at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas. So news out of that press conference, it's 25 and an unborn child, or a fetus, if you will.
So the controversy here, I guess, is not about the facts. Obviously, Ms. Holcomb was pregnant and died, and the child or the fetus died. But the argument's about the language. So, Dana, how would you handle this? I mean, obviously, people who are pro-life are saying, well, she said unborn child, but then I wonder if some producer in her ear said, well, we don't want to use that kind of charged language because it's politicized. Just say fetus.
Well, I wouldn't criticize her necessarily, but I would say that it's important these are decisions made by state governments. So the federal government doesn't have a position on this. This is a crime that took place in Texas, and in Texas, a fetus is considered a child. It is a life. And so if, for example, there was Kimberly, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's just say that a pregnant mother, she's driving down the highway, she gets hit by a drunk driver, and it was reckless endangerment, and she lives, but the baby dies. Like, that would, in Texas and in many other states, including Virginia, that child would be counted as a life that passed away. So it varies by state, but I do think is interesting is that just take the laws away from it. if that woman had survived, but her baby had died, she would have believed that her baby was killed.
Yes.
Okay, so I think that you also have to think it's not just the laws, but it's about the mother and the father and what they think about and hope and dream for when their child is going to be born in however many months it's going to be born. They celebrate the moment they find out that they're pregnant.
So, Kimberly, the people who are pro-choice say, hey, wait a second, so where are you going with this? In fact, there was a bill being considered in the Congress, and you have Republicans saying that the minute you have a heartbeat, that heartbeat then constitutes a life. What do you say?
Well, I'd say that I followed the law. And the law in the state of Texas, as it stands, where this woman and her children and her unborn child was murdered, is fertilization to actual birth. It is considered a life.
Is that right? Fertilization?
Yes, correct.
Wow.
Yes.
In Texas, twice the Texas Court of Appeal has upheld this for double homicide, a murder conviction of man who killed a pregnant woman's unborn child, and that's the language on it. So that's what the law is. Now, to take Dana's hypothetical, if that woman had driven across state lines in a car and then was killed by a drunk driver in a different state that didn't honor that, it would not be charged then in that state, and that's the law and the way it stands today.
So, Jesse, one of the things also being considered in the Congress is that an unborn child or a fetus, whatever you want to say, would be eligible for a college savings plan. What do you think of this?
I think that's a great idea. I mean, college is so expensive, it makes perfect sense. But obviously, there's some people, like Planned Parenthood, that don't want this because you put that language in statutory terms, then that establishes life in a bill. When it comes to tax purposes and the Treasury, and they don't want anything going close to that because for them that is a very slippery slope. But you hit the nail on the head, Juan. It's all about language. Just reading this article here, they don't even use the phrase pro-life anymore when describing these groups. They call them anti-abortion groups. So it's all disguised in the way you describe these people, and the language is used to characterize people from a certain position, sometimes fairly and sometimes unfairly. But back to what you're saying, I believe some pro-choice women would like to start saving for college while they're pregnant. I don't know why it's being so politicized.
But, Greg, I think part of the argument here is you're going to start defining life in a tax bill. And by the way, in the same tax bill, they take away the tax credit for adoption. So what is going on?
Yeah, I don't understand that part at all. But we're not just... The reason why we're distorting language is because we're politicizing life. You know, we live in a war between reality and politics. In reality, the human is alive until you abort it. You know that, it's dead. Politically, it's your choice, your right to choose. So you take something that is real and then you turn it into something political. These sides, the real and the political, they run parallel. They never cross, but they can. And every now and then you will run into a pro-choicer, and you run into this more often than you used to. And I call it the honest pro-choicer. I'm pro-choice even though I know it's murder. You see this a lot now. If you watch Louis C.K.'s Netflix comedy, that he opens with this. And it's like people, they're beginning to understand because science is showing you that you are preventing a life. And then the pro-choicer has to make the decision, well, I know that, and I'm still going to make this decision. Honest pro-choice. Then you have to have the honest pro-lifer that says, if I believe this is murder, what is that worth? What is that worth? Slavery caused the Civil War. That's, I mean, both sides have to contend with the ugly realities of their stances. And but the fact is, all this comes down to everybody kind of knows what it is. Yep. It's how you live with it.
Well, I don't know that everybody agrees with you on this, because I think there are lots of people.
Everybody
there are people. There are people who
read science books
in terms of the language who favor the death penalty, right? And you say, well, what is that about? Or
I don't know how I am on the death penalty.
All right. Anyway, fasten your seatbelts. President Trump now has twice the room to vent at us all on Twitter. The social media shakeup everybody's talking and tweeting about.